Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jack Myers. I'm one of the directors here at Alder. We're just going to wait a moment while people join the event, and then we'll get things started. Fantastic. I think I might just begin the session now. So many thanks for everyone joining us today. Before we begin, I just want to start with a few house rules. This is a fireside chat, so if you have any questions at any point, you should be able to see at the bottom of your toolbar on the call a little option there which says Q&A. If you have any questions at any point during this webinar, use that function rather than the chat box. If we don't get to your question during this today's discussion, don't worry about that because we'll be in contact following the webinar with our team's contact details. Also, just to let everybody know that this session will also be recorded in case there are other people on your team that like to watch it back. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, Alder is a reputational risk and crisis advisory firm. We regularly advise on a range of issues across the crisis and risk spectrum, everything from more harrowing events such as fatalities, criminal matters, public inquiries, and regulatory issues, to maybe the softer sort of side of crisis and risk, and that'll be things like restructures and strategic announcements. For today's webinar, we are here to talk about what every organisation needs to know about AI and online reputation. And I'm very pleased to introduce Anna Mortel, who's Managing Director at Status Labs, and James Runt, who's Senior Director at Status Labs as well. Status Labs, for those of you who haven't come across Status Labs, is a global leader in online reputation management, helping individuals, executives, organizations control and protect how they appear online. That's often done by a combination. I know both Anna and James are going to tell us a bit more in detail what this constitutes, but tends to be a combination of SEO, content strategy, digital PR, and that's to help the shape the narrative, particularly at times when it matters most. Just in terms of background, so Anna Mortel is Managing Director of Status Labs European office, and she works with a diverse range of clients, including high net worth individuals, corporates, schools, and charities. James is the Senior Director of Partnerships at Status Labs. We are very, very grateful to have his time here today because he's calling in from Austin, Texas. I know it's incredibly early over there, but thank you very much for spending time to talk with us today, James. And James also brings a decade of experience in online reputation, guiding on crisis communication, PR, and speaking regularly with PR firms, law firms, and family offices with complex digital challenges. So maybe if I start with you, Anna, one of the most difficult aspects in a crisis that needs really careful and tailored management is how reputation is impacted online. So I wonder, just to start us all off, when organizations talk about reputation, what do they need, what do they often misunderstand about how reputations are being formed online?
Yeah, this is a great question to start with because I genuinely think this misconception is absolutely everywhere. Most organizations treat reputation like it's a brand asset that they own and control. And I completely understand why, because that's how we think about brand in almost every other context. But online, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. Because when someone searches for your name or your organization, your reputation is whatever comes up. That's what Google surfaces, what Reddit is saying, what AI tools are increasingly telling people. And honestly, it has very little to do with what you say about yourself, which I think comes as quite an uncomfortable realization for a lot of organizations when they first hear that.
Mm.
The other thing that I really push back on is this idea that ORM, which is online reputation management, for those that haven't heard of it, is only for organizations in crisis. Some of our most important work is with organizations that are absolutely fine right now, and aren't expecting a negative media cycle. Because if you've built a solid digital footprint before something goes wrong, you've got very little to work with when it does. So it's so much easier to protect something, than to be reactive when a PR crisis does occur. And then, of course, as you've already touched on, there's the AI piece on top of all that, which is just changing everything. ChatGPT, Claude, etc. These AI tools are now summarizing information for people. So reputation is being shaped by what they say about you too. That's where GEO comes in, which stands for Generative Engine Optimization. It's a mouthful. Some people are calling it AEO, which is Answering Engine Optimization, and some people are calling it AI SEO. We're running with GEO for now. But the organizations that are taking GEO seriously right now are going to be in a really strong position as that search landscape continues to change.
I think there's a number of interesting things there because obviously organizations, they may have some understanding about the importance of SEO,
Yeah.
search engine optimization, but it sounds like it's very quickly being overtaken by GEO, AIO, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
And it's the new frontier, isn't it? It is very much you're seeing it on the ground yourselves in the work that you do, but it's a lot of it comes back to some very kind of obvious things, perhaps when you take a step back, about just having that cushion of reputation as a just a, as a, at a basic level that will assist you no matter then what hits the fan. Should it come to it?
Yeah, I think that's it. A lot of clients we work with have this vacuum of content, so there's nothing out there about them. And when something negative happens, that is just filled with this negativity. So it's really, really important, as you say, to have this buffer and to kind of make sure that your digital scaffolding, is supported should a crisis occur.
Yeah, Fab. I think buffer's a really useful kind of way of thinking about it as
Yeah.
well. So just to bring James into the conversation at this point. So for many organizations, the first impression online is now a Google search, an AI summary, a review site, a Reddit thread. So how should leaders think about that ecosystem as a whole? How does it kind of connect with each other?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack here. Yeah, so I think the most important way to think about it is like your online presence isn't one thing anymore. It really has to be this mindset shift if you are, a leader of your organization or leading, any sort of online strategy for your business, for an individual, whoever it may be. So it's a massive ecosystem now of signals across search, AI, reviews, forums like Anna touched on, your Reddits, your Quoras of the world that are more community based, which is kind of a crazy world we're living in where a lot of these community based forums are actually feeding AI search results. So it's not just some, random online system that's feeding this. It's actual like human beings who are teaching AI what to give us the answers to. So that's one big thing that we always really, really touch on. So again, thinking of this in three layers is kind of like a basic building block where you have what Google surfaces. It's slowly going by the wayside, but Google is still the primary search of like how people are looking for things online. So that's, an absolutely critical asset that you have to focus on. The AI layer, which we're hearing about all day, every day, and how we're moving as a business. So what is ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI? What is that saying about you? And the sentiment layer. And then also these forums that Anna touched on earlier, but just how are humans feeding this and where are your customers? Where are your clients talking about you and how are they perceiving you? Because that's an extremely important asset that you have to focus on. So we are teaching our clients this mindset shift of stop asking what does your like website say about you. That's an important asset and you still need to take control of it, but start asking what does the internet believe about us. So these are the two things that are often very different, because these are assets that we control, but there are things that traditionally a lot of our clients think they can't control, but they absolutely can. It just takes time and foresight and just making sure that you're understanding this ecosystem.
You've mentioned a number of very interesting things there. Just to pick you up
Hmm.
on one thing, just to pick on one thing, you mentioned a number of different AI tools, and I'm sure people on the call will have experience maybe of one. I think it's unlikely they'll have used all of them, but you mentioned, for example, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. I'm just interested, do it in terms of how you manage GEO, do you have to do different things to influence different platforms, or are there easy things you could be doing that will influence all platforms? How targeted on your side does your strategy need to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. We think we have a good grasp on it. It's still the Wild West a little bit, right? As you know, we're navigating these platforms, but a lot of the assets that we either have relationships with or own in-house can influence the broad spectrum of LLMs. And for those of you who don't know what LLM stands for, large language model, that's a fancy way of saying like these chatbots or ChatGPT is an LLM. Um, so we do want to make sure that we're influencing across the board, and there aren't necessarily different strategies to influence all of them. Like, for example, working on projects, if we put out a really strong piece of content, it's typically going to be filtered by all of these because we know how to do the markup on the back end of a website. We know the content that it wants to see. Um, so yeah, the short answer is just focus on really good tried and true strategies from a GEO perspective, and the fruits of the labor should happen across, all of these AI chatbots.
Brilliant. That's really useful to understand. So maybe if
Yeah.
I come back to you at this point, Anna, because you know there seems to be an overlap SEO when it comes to GEO, and I just wanted to maybe start with something I think maybe most people in the call are familiar with is just a negative story online. So if maybe I can ask, so how should organizations respond when old negative stories continue to dominate search results years after an issue has actually been resolved?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Jack, this is the situation that we come across the most here at Status Labs. Internally, we call it legacy reputational risk, and it's the situation that frustrates our clients more than almost anything else. They've done everything right, they've dealt with the issue, they've made the changes, and they've moved on internally. And the internet just hasn't moved on, and the issue is still defining them. The truth is, you can't make the issue disappear, unfortunately, but you absolutely can change what sits alongside it and above it. It's really about building a stronger body of content so that search engines have better and more current material to work with. New coverage is super important, as you can imagine, particularly when there's a sticky issue sitting in search results. Getting your organization featured on reputable external sites helps dissociate you from that negative bucket of keywords and starts retraining the algorithm to associate the organization name with themes that are current, relevant, and more often not, they're neutral or positive themes. So what I always say to clients is that Google isn't judging what's fair, unfortunately. It just ranks whatever is relevant, authoritative, and what's getting lots of engagement. And unfortunately, negativity tends to get a lot of engagement in this day and age. So
Mhm.
if a negative article has 200 sites linking to it and yours only has 10, that negative article is always going to win. So the work is in shifting that balance and retraining the algorithm, which takes time, but it absolutely works. And of
Mm,
course, GEO plays into this too. If
mm.
AI tools are pulling from old negative content to summarize your organization, you need to give them something better to work with, essentially.
Quite. I mean, we're seeing that in some of our work, is that
Yeah.
increasingly AI tools is just surfacing very old negative news. And it comes to everything you're saying there, the importance of having kind of a base level digital strategy rather than just turning to it in a crisis moment. Um, so just maybe developing that a little bit further. So what should organizations be checking regularly to understand how they're actually appearing online?
Yeah, so I think there are a few things that are really important here. And honestly, most organizations aren't doing all of them, if any. So the first thing I do is do an incognito Google search of your organization name or any senior leadership that are important to brand reputation too. To get an incognito browser, you need to open Chrome, press Control, Shift, and then N for November, and that will bring up a darker window. That is your incognito browser. The reason this matters as a starting point for search is you'll be seeing results completely fresh, exactly as a stranger would, rather than the personalized, potentially more flattering version Google shows you from your usual browser, because it's basing results on what you've clicked on previously. Then I would go to ChatGPT, Perplexity, and any kind of AI tools, and ask questions your customers or stakeholders would realistically ask about your organization or your industry. Take note of what comes up because it can be quite eye-opening for a lot of industries. And again, something that James touched on earlier, something that's changed a lot recently is that Google is now prioritizing authentic human opinion as a source. So that's real reviews, real conversations, real community discussions. So your review platforms really now matter more than ever. Reddit, as we've touched on, is also massively underrated by most organizations. Google really prioritizes it at the moment. AI tools treat it as high quality signal, and a thread that gains traction can genuinely outlast a press release. So there's lots of change there. Also, if you have a Wikipedia page, please check it regularly. It ranks incredibly highly, and AI tools pull from it constantly. You'd be surprised how many organizations I speak to who don't know what's written on their Wikipedia page. Also, this is a really simple one, but please make sure to set up Google Alerts for your priority keywords. It sounds simple and obvious, but it's a really good way to keep track on what third parties are saying about you. And also, should something negative come out that you're not expecting, you can be on it straight away. As you're going through all these steps, take regular screenshots of page one, AI results, and your review ratings as well. This is the simplest way to benchmark where you started and also to show progress over time internally. I think the last point is that ORM is a long game, and you won't see results overnight, unfortunately. Typically, it takes 30 to 60 days to see the fruits of your labor. And most of our campaigns run for around 12 months. That's just to make sure that the work we do sticks in the long term. So make sure you're setting those expectations early and agree internally what success looks like before you begin.
Loads of interesting things there. Can I just pick out two things there? So the
Yes.
first is Reddit, because you talked about it in this context of, what was it, authentic human opinion?
Yeah.
Is that the reason why LLMs prioritize or Reddit? Because my experience of Reddit is some mad, threads on absolutely anything, and I actually see it in a lot of the crisis side, where just people speculating about very serious matters on Reddit. And I think the world 10, 15 years ago, we would have ignored Reddit
Yeah.
because, so long as it's contained on Reddit, we don't need to do anything. But it sounds like it's an emerging area of risk, what's appearing on Reddit. But is that because of the human opinion angle there?
Yeah, I'm with you, Jack. It really is the Wild West on Reddit. But yeah, it's because of the human element. Google is savvy to the fact that a lot of content that's out there has had some kind of influence from the organization that it's about. And there's a lot of paid partnerships you can do. So it's favoring those human elements because they're more real and more authentic. So that's why Reddit is so highly regarded, and people are seeing it now on page one, and they're seeing it in those AI answers as well. So yeah, it really is new, it's emerging, but it seems to be really, really important to those AI results.
Fascinating, fascinating. I might actually just bring my second question actually over to you, James. It's just
Yeah.
something we've mentioned here about certain things that we can be doing, certain things we can be monitoring. But I think another aspect to bear in mind is it's just as much science as art. So it's one of the reasons why we do so much work with you guys. Is it's one thing to say we should be, might need to put out content in order to help with online reputation matters. But it's really important, is it, the type of content you're putting out, the sort of messages you're putting out there, because they can, if done badly or done in a non-strategic way, it can create its own crisis. So just maybe expanding that more broadly, is there anything else that organizations should be thinking about in terms of building resilience on the online side?
Yeah, like you said, it's threading a needle a little bit, especially if you are going through some sort of crisis. But I think the biggest thing, and Anna can probably attest to this too, like you'd be surprised how many organizations just get this word in their head like, oh, we need online reputation, we need to build resilience, but they don't fully understand their brand or their organization, and they don't know like how they kind of want to move forward in whatever direction that may be on how they're perceived online. So I think the first step is like, how do you want to be perceived online? Again, not just using your website, but how are people talking about you, within these forums to hit on what you were talking about on the Reddit side, and investing when things are calm. Because a lot of our clients come to us when, they are going through some sort of crisis. So if you do have the luxury where, nothing negative is impacting your organization online, this is a great place to start. Similar to the kind of traditional, crisis PR playbook, like always have, your kind of go bag in terms of like when something actually happens. So this will set you up for success in the long run. To hit on what Anna said, Wikipedia is a massive thing that we've been having a lot of conversations about. Probably Reddit and Wikipedia are the two biggest sources that LLMs are pulling from now. So a lot of our clients are coming to us and we're having those detailed conversations about how do we build that out for the long term. So that's a platform that's been, top of mind for a lot of people. As silly as it may sound, LinkedIn is a really big source now that LLMs are
Oh,
pulling
okay.
from. I think that's top five at this point. So when you search, if someone were to search, who is James Barnt, tell me about him, my LinkedIn profile is probably going to be one of the top sources, mainly because, I'm not a celebrity that anyone knows about. There's not a lot out there about me, but I do have a LinkedIn page. So a lot of the times that businesses, individuals are doing due diligence on your brands, that's something that's really, really massive that's going to be pulling. So as silly as that sounds, that basic building block of LinkedIn, making sure your profile is up to date. If you are comfortable with posting on a consistent way, I know it can be kind of corny posting on LinkedIn sometimes, but if it is on brand for you and your business, that's something that we always encourage. And then just industry directories, bylined
Hmm.
articles, a well-structured website. That's something that we've been exploring a lot too, where there's a lot you can do on the back end of your website. And I won't get into too many of the details because we only have a short amount of time here, but there's a lot that we're doing for our clients that's not even forward facing. Like if someone were to search your organization, they won't find it on your actual website, but it's on the back end of where like all the markup is for a website. And LLMs are pulling from that as well when you're searching your brand. So you can get really, really creative there. So again, I think the biggest thing is this resilience is coming from diversification, thinking about how your brand is perceived across all these different assets that you might not have a full grasp on. So just understanding what
Hmm.
they are. So the more places that you have positive stories, the harder it is for a single narrative to kind of take control over that.
That is fascinating. That point you make there about there are things you can be doing online that aren't necessarily consumer or external stakeholder audience facing, but are going to inform LLMs in terms of what they surface. I think that is very interesting. Can I
Yeah.
just bring up one thing because you mentioned Wikipedia being really important, and it just it could give me a cardiac episode. Just think of those stories where, for example, members of Parliament edit their own Wikipedia page from Westminster, and that creates its own story. And I just wonder whether you have any views about editing your own Wikipedia page. Is there a health risk there just to maybe put out?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this, Anna.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I mean, one that's kind of funny and they shouldn't do that for obvious reasons. IP addresses are very easily
Yeah.
findable. So yeah, we always advise our clients to not directly edit their own Wikipedia pages as much as they think they are experts. Like you said, we've had clients come to us and they're like, "Hey, I tried editing it," and the first edit that we see or the last edit that was made, it's like first name from X organization. It's like, okay, well, You probably shouldn't
Mhm.
have created an account that's the name of the business. Um,
Right.
but yeah, the short answer is don't edit your own Wikipedia page. We have a team dedicated in-house that is able to assist with that. It's the waters are so treacherous when it comes to
Mhm.
editing Wikipedia pages. And again, it kind of goes back to like building that resilience where if you are in a good spot as a business, it's much easier to edit. As
Mhm.
opposed to, you can imagine a lot of clients come to us when there's like a massive controversy section and they need to help mitigate it. Um,
Yes.
there are subtle
I,
nuances that need to take place. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I think it's that point, isn't it? Is that you probably an organization probably would only go try to edit the Wikipedia page in a crisis, and it just happens to be the exact moment when people will scrutinise who's editing the page. So it certainly sounds like something to delegate to reputation experts like you.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just to bring it together, maybe add some colour to it. I was wondering whether you might be able to talk us through a sort of case study. So um, are you able to just share how this might work in practice or how cases come in and the sort of things you're able to do for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we could share, specifics kind of given our line of work. We take our clients' anonymity very seriously, but for the sake of this call, I'm happy to kind of give a high level look of a mid-sized private university that we worked with here in the United States. I'm, aware the education system works a little bit differently, but this was about a year ago. They had been through a pretty rough stretch. It was, I'll just use kind of like a public incident on campus. It drew national press coverage, and there were a couple articles that hadn't aged well. And these were in, what we call tier one articles, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. So these were some pretty heavy hitters, and it got some national attention. This is something that, you know, everyone even across the pond had probably heard of. So the biggest thing was admissions was feeling this, right? That's the main thing that all universities most likely care about. Yield was down. Prospective families were running their due diligence on Google. So this was a year ago before, ChatGPT had like really, really blown up. Um, but I imagine if this happened now, this is where they would be going. So the diligence kept landing on the wrong things, because these are the sources that these things are pulling from. So first things first, do a massive audit of what is out there, not only from the obvious tier one articles that hit, but how do we look at Wikipedia? Half of the university's page had become a controversies section. So it was literally a link that you could click on and it built out,
Yeah.
what was happening. And it was an ongoing, we'll call it crisis. So when that happens, more news is coming out and more things are being added to a Wikipedia page. So these were incidents, lawsuits. So the best strategy there was not deleting any of it. Similar to what you were talking about, Jack. You can't just go in there and scrub the whole page. So there is a little bit of subtle nuances of how do we get this to the most neutral kind of point of view as possible. These things did happen, but how do we meet it head on and how do we work within Wikipedia's guidelines to make sure that it's not this thing that's like completely blown out of proportion and completely negative? Um, so that was one thing that we explored and, we were successful there, which was great. And then, Reddit being kind of the biggest thing that we're talking about here, it was a top result when you search the university online. And to kind of take Anna's point further, when you were asking her specifically of like why these LLMs are pulling information from Reddit, Google and Reddit do have, an official partnership. So most organizations you look at now, if there is a Reddit thread about the business, it's going to be populating. So that was on page one. It was a very specific Reddit thread about the university life and college system and applying to colleges here in the United States. So this was full of perfect prospective students, excuse me, essentially kind of relitigating the incident. So what we did is we worked on the ecosystem around it. So that would be student voice content, faculty thought leadership, and fresh earned coverage on academic programs. So the Reddit thread is still there, but it's just no longer the first thing that people see, which which is really great to see. And then just the biggest thing is like looking at the chat GPTs and the perplexities of the world. So every sort of thread or question, the answer always brought up this controversy. So we audited these articles. What were they citing? And then we got the university into four new authority pieces. So kind of thinking of it like fighting fire with fire, where we're able to not only get those articles, but optimize them with kind of that technical work. And
Mm.
now there is no sort of like bulk controversy or criticisms of the university when you search them online. Um, so I think the biggest lesson here is just, you can't necessarily post on Reddit. You can't like unilaterally scrub something from the internet,
No, no.
but you can, influence what is being said about you from an institution standpoint.
It sounds like it comes back to the previous point. It's just as much an art as a science. It does, sounds like a lot of the time require an enormous amount of strategic thought. It's not as simple as you were saying as just going in guns blazing, tearing things down. That can often sounds like be counterproductive. I'm interested in one thing you mentioned there because I think it links on to a point Anna made earlier. So, just as part of what organisations can be doing now, Anna, you suggested, if you want an honest look at your online reputation, you need to start from an incognito browser. And I'm wondering whether that's the same for ChatGPT, Claude, or these other LLMs. Which should that also be done in an incognito fashion? Because I'm aware often if you have used these AI tools, they have a memory, and therefore they might skew your the response to your questions. Um, I don't know. Are there incognito modes? Can you do this on AI tools?
Yeah, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I would do is just log out of any AI tools that you're logged in on. So ChatGPT, like you say, it will remember everything you've asked before. You're training it every single time you ask it a question, and every time
Mm.
it gives you an answer that you're happy with. So make sure you log out of your specific AI tool and go in again completely blank without any logins or any questions asked prior. That's the best place to kind of get a really accurate reflection of how you're being portrayed on those tools.
Yeah. And I've even taken it a step further just because I'm always like, we're always noodling around on these platforms. And I've even done it where, hey, forget everything that you know about me. Like you can literally just tell the
Yeah.
chatbot this, like, forget everything you know about me. I want to search this brand or, tell me about X, Y, or Z. So that's been kind of like a fun way to teach your tool. But the way Anna said is like a perfectly fine way to do it too. But just familiarizing yourself with these platforms and how they operate is a good exercise as
Indeed.
well.
Very good, very good. So I thought maybe just as a kind of like in conclusion, I don't know if there's any practical steps you can take away with them that you can share, James, Anna.
Yeah, I think from a practicality standpoint, we've kind of hit on this a couple times, but just understanding what is being said about your brand. Um,
Mm.
what does your page one Google search results look like? What does the most basic search, in ChatGPT look like when you're, searching your organization? Just so you know what sources are being deemed as like the most authoritative when people are searching for you. And most likely, if you have a Wikipedia page, if there are Reddit threads about, your organization, if there are top tier news articles, those are probably going to be the main sources. So I think understanding what's being said about you and then understanding kind of how you want to, move into the future as people are searching for you, because a lot of times like Hannah can probably attest to this, we'll get hit up by, the CMO of a company. It's like my CEO just randomly Googled something and they said this is a problem. And they don't really fully comprehend what it is. It's just kind of anecdotal. So I think making sure you as a full organization from top down understand what is out there, what is important, and how do you move forward from there. And then you can pull different levers in terms of like the actual strategy of implementing this. So that's what I always advise.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, I think the most concerning long-term problem with AI tools is invisibility. If AI tools
Mm.
aren't citing you as a credible source on your industry, say you're a florist in London and someone searches for the best florist in London and you're not coming up in AI answers, then you're essentially absent from a huge and growing part of how people find information. That's just an example. We don't have any florists that we work with. Um, but you can apply it to absolutely any industry. Ask those questions, find out where you're ranking, where you're not. I think the biggest thing is rather than a reputation problem on AI tools, it's a real competitive disadvantage we're seeing. So what tackles this is GEO. It's about creating content that AI tools actually want to cite and surface. And the organizations that are putting genuine effort into that now are going to have a really meaningful head start as the search landscape continues to change. So yeah, just be mindful of that as well.
Brilliant. That's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for your time, Anna, James.
No worries.
In terms of, we don't have any questions from the floor
Yeah.
at the moment, but in terms of everyone who's attended today, if you have got any questions for either us here at Alder or for anyone at Status Labs, you'll get our contact details from our team later this afternoon. Can I just end by just re-extending my thanks to James in particular, waking up so early in the morning and coming to talk to us, and Anna as well. Thank you so much. For anyone interested in learning more from the Alder webinar series, do just stay on our newsletter mail list. We do these kind of regularly on a fortnightly, monthly basis. And indeed, if you've got any questions about any matters separate to this, do just contact the team. One question has just come in.
Ooh.
From the floor. It just regards video. I don't know whether you, either you, James, or Anna, have any thoughts about the importance of video when we're talking about online reputation in particular. I suppose I know where I come from it in terms of video. I think obviously it can be very important in terms of gaining attention in a very human sense. I know that the press releases that are put out with video content or social media posts that are put out with video content tend to get more attention. But I don't know how AI tools are using or interpreting video content. I don't know whether you have any insights on that.
I'm happy to answer that question. Like you said, from a baseline, and that's a great question. A lot of our clients come to us when it's ranking, on Google search results. Google owns YouTube, so they weight it very, very heavily. And we always encourage our clients if there is, a negative video that is surfaced, we really need to think of like a, video strategy. But we haven't seen too much video as far as like a source being pulled into an answer, across like, any sort of chat bot, just to answer your question, just kind of at like a baseline. But I have to imagine if there is like a negative controversy or something that is gaining a lot of traction, a YouTube video or like an Instagram post could eventually be a source that's being pulled from, but we haven't run into that too often. I think it just depends on your brand too. Like if you're a content creator, for example, like I would have to imagine that would be a big source. But if you're, just kind of like a big bank that doesn't create a lot of video content and doesn't have a lot of video content out there about you, it probably won't be a contextually relevant source.
I think it's really useful. Thank you very much, James.
Yeah.
We've got people coming back. I think you might have answered this though, James, just in terms of, to be really clear, in terms of how AI reads video content versus textual content. I imagine it's one of those things. Part of the answer is Wild West. So although it doesn't actually make too much of a difference, it doesn't prioritize, say, video content over written content. AI tools are advancing at an almost breakneck speed, and it may well change in coming months and years. But at the moment, it doesn't really change the strategy in terms of the ones that you're employing. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think what I'd say to that is, as it is constantly changing, everything is important. I wish we could be more specific than that, but everything is important. Your video content is important. The blogs you're putting out there are important. I think every kind of asset of digital reputation is important right now because so much of it is unknown. And as Jack said, it's constantly changing. So right now, yeah, video content isn't the most important thing that AI tools are pulling from, but next week or tomorrow that could change. So just stay on top of it all. And in the long term, that will help you be prepared for that change in search landscape.
That's really helpful. Thank you, James and Anna, for that. So at this point, I'm going to give everyone 5 more minutes of their lunch break back. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Thank you, Anna, again, and James. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye bye.